Hey everyone, welcome to the next preseason Serie A fantasy video where we are going to talk about the things that we learned from the results from some of the Coppa Italia matches that have occurred before the start of the season. They finished kind of just over this past weekend and are really the only competitive fixtures that some of the Serie A teams have played that can give us an idea of what we can expect from them. So in this video, we're going to be focused on kind of, I'd say, the mid to lower table clubs, the video, because the higher table teams will not have played any Coppa Italia matches yet. So yeah, without further ado, let's get going. Just want to say thank you so much for helping me get over 300 subscribers as well. Please keep that tally going. Generally, you get the most growth in subscribers in the preseason, and it levels out during the season. So let's try to get that number as high as possible before Saturday. All right, so just a quick synopsis of the Coppa Italia. So it is the Italian domestic cup. It's not just the Serie A teams. It goes down the Serie A. I actually don't know how far down the pyramid it goes. Definitely Serie A B teams. I'm not sure about seeing further. Um, but anyway, generally, this is the tournament that the smaller clubs have a better chance of winning. It's I don't even remember the last time not a like traditional top Serie A team won the Scudetto for the league. It's as long as I can remember that the Juve's, Inter's, AC Milan's, Napoli's, they've all kind of been winning it. Um, but so when you're playing games where it's win or go home, it gives a little more opportunity for the smaller clubs. And generally, you will see some of them make it to quarters, semis, and so on and so forth. So what you end up finding is a lot of the smaller clubs, they will play their best teams in Coppa Italia matches because this is a title that might be more attainable than a Scudetto, whereas starting 11s for top teams will generally be more of a rotated squad, playing backup keepers and featuring some players that maybe won't get as much time normally. One, because can probably still win like that. It's probably still stronger than facing a Serie B team or a low-level Serie A team. Um, and also, they just have a bigger club, more players that they need to get time as well. So Coppa Italia is a good way to see, especially in the preseason, which players will be starting for these smaller clubs and maybe some cheap budget players that we could add to our squads. We're going to be focusing just kind of on players that made starting 11s for teams, if anyone did any significant in the game, and the price. And it's all mostly based on team sheet and stats. I'll honestly say I didn't actually sit down and watch any of these games, but I've looked them all over, seeing where in the field players were playing and if anyone scored or stuff like that. Okay, so the first game that we're looking at featured Frosinone. We're obviously only going to look at the Coppa Italia games that featured Serie A teams. Frosinone beat Pisa 1-0. And one thing that jumped right off the page at me right away is their starting keeper was Stefano Turati. Again, this is the only competitive match they've played so far this year, so I'm assuming that this will be their starting keeper, who is 4.0. And I did say, so right now, if you looked at my first draft, I had a 3.8 keeper in. I didn't really care which one it was as long as it wasn't from a big club. But if I'm only going up kind of one price bracket to 4.0, it may be worth having a second starting keeper in the team, just in case you have one of the top keepers, and let's say it's a week before Champions League, they sometimes in their Serie A match will play their backup keeper. So then they have the full rested, whether that be Chesney or not this year, Chesney, my bad there. But Mignon or Samer or something might play in the Champions League. So it's sometimes good just to have a backup keeper to sub in just in case. Or if for whatever reason, because as you know, I have Sommer. If it's Inter versus AC Milan, but then Frosinone was playing Cagliari, then that would maybe make me think, maybe it is worth trying to hope for the clean sheet for Frosinone, whereas AC Milan, it's going to be hard for Inter to keep a clean sheet against them. Absolutely could happen, but it might allow for a little bit of flexibility. I think 4.0 is as far as I would go for a backup keeper, but definitely a player that I'm considering getting into my squad. The most expensive defender for Frosinone is 4.4 mil. And they have some for a little cheaper as well. So in case you're just trying to fill a spot, it might be worth looking there where you could get a playing defender for a team. The center attacker that started this match for Frosinone was Gennaro Borelli. He is also listed at 4.4. So again, if you're looking to play with less forwards but want to playing forward on the bench, Borelli could be someone that frees up a lot of space elsewhere in the squad. And at the end of the day, he's a playing striker. He's going to be the one that Frosinone looks to score goals, assuming he holds the starting spot. Again, I don't know a whole lot about these teams, just looking at these team sheets and in a competitive match. So if these actually aren't the players that end up starting, I don't know, but this is why I'm looking at these Coppa Italia games, because they are competitive matches. I'm assuming that these teams are probably starting who they think that they're going to be playing in the regular season. But Frosinone did win this game on an own goal, so Borelli did not score. No one scored from their team. It was one on an own goal. Moving forward to Udinese, they won big over Catanzaro. And one player that stuck, there were two players that stuck out to me. First of all was Festi Ebosele. He played on as a wing back for Udinese, started there, and he's only 4.2 mil, which is very cheap for a defender. So one player, again, that if you're looking for a cheap defender that doesn't need to play all the time, but could at least get minutes, and it's going to be more of a defensive attacking role. He's someone that you could be looking at. The player that I'm looking at most at in this team right now is Florian Thauvin. He's listed at 5.6 and as a midfielder, but he played up beside Beto as far as the team sheet said. And there was also a penalty in the game, and he did take the penalty, which steers me to think that he would take penalties being on the field in regular season games as well. He played alongside Beto, who looked to be the main striker pick there. Other players that often play on the Udinese side are Success, who he kind of rotated a lot with Beto last season, so that rotation could still be there. De La Feu is injured until a couple games into the season, so he's kind of out of the picture right now. So Toven might be someone worth considering if you're looking for a cheaper, maybe a differential midfielder. And if he's playing an attacking role and on PKs, that could be a really nice player to be thinking about. Moving on to Genoa, and this was a really interesting striker to see Matteo Retucci coming in, I think, from Tigres. Scored a brace in this game, so he got 2 goals for Genoa, and he seems to be a reliable attacker for this promoted Genoa side. 6.0 mil might be a little expensive for a striker from a newly promoted team, but he does seem to be one of the better strikers in the lower teams. I don't really think this player's Morten Thorsby, someone I'm really looking at, did score a goal. Just kind of wanted to point it out. 4.8 midfielder would be pretty cheap to have, but I'm not trying to suggest you go pick him up right now. Just a little note there. As far as the Genoa defense, it looked a little too expensive for the team that's probably going, or a team that's probably going to be getting beaten relatively easily, especially by the big teams. If I'm looking for defenders at this team, I'm probably looking for 4.4 below, and I think that they were like 4.8, 4.6 or something like that as far as the defenders that started the game. But Retucci, I'm really considering at least taking a look at for the third striker spot for me. Again, doesn't have to be a player that's starting every single week for you. But if someone needs to sub and come in, that could be a reliable source there. The next one was Bologna winning 2-0 over Cesena. Arnautovic started the game, so he still seems to be their starting striker, but he did not score. Both goals came off the bench. The defense, I think, was way too expensive for being a Bologna defense at the end of the day. They were 5 mils or 4.8s. Honestly, nothing impressed me too much about Bologna. They've been obviously a Serie A squad for a long time. They always hold their own, but as far as fantasy assets, I wasn't too thrilled by any of the options. I know I've been a fan of Arnautovic in the past, but he's been wishy-washy, especially last season, and I can't see myself starting with him. And the results of the Coppa Italia match didn't look very promising. Going to the first loss by one of the Serie A sides, Empoli lost 2-1 to Cittadella. Caputo was their starting striker. He's listed at 7.0 mil. Has actually been a pretty good striker for Sassuolo in the past, now with a new team. Obviously, this is the only competitive fixture so far that we've been able to see from them, so it's not like we can judge it all in one match. But it's not someone that I'm going to be starting out with for sure. Um, Interesting start in goal here with Elia Caprile, who could give you a starting keeper at 4.2 mil. So if you really wanted to roll the dice with your keepers and you had the Empoli and Frosinone keeper, and you're just banking on getting a lot of shots on target and the odd clean sheet, that could actually have quite a give you a bit of money going forward. But that also could be risky, and that could be a lot of goals against as well, especially with each goal against giving you a -1 rather than every two, like we've seen in other games. But yeah, with the loss to the Serie B team, although Cittadella has been okay in actually past seasons and made the playoffs quite a few times, it's still kind of didn't look promising for grabbing anyone from the Empoli side as of right now. Hellas Verona beat Ascoli 3-1. A player that was really interesting to see it was Milan Duric, who offers a forward that's playing at 4.8 mil, extremely cheap for a striker. And he would also took the penalty in the game. So if he's on penalties, so any penalty that Hellas Verona gets, he'll be taking. He'll be starting forward, and at only 4.8, I think this is a player that we at least need to give a chance in our minds and consider. So definitely one that I'm looking at. Before I had Jovic on my side, and Fiorentina has since made some signings, and I don't think that I'll be starting with him anymore. So maybe to be able to add some money elsewhere in my team, Juric could be someone that I would be considering to put in, and that frees up money to either improve my midfield or defense, or to have some money lying around to make transfers going forward easier. Another player that did okay is Jordi Mbula. He's listed as a midfielder, was playing more of an attacking wing position at 4.4. So just an option as a budget midfield. He's another example that I'm not saying go pick him up, but just when you're looking through, when you're wondering on some of these small teams, which of these players start, which of them don't, because basically before I look at these team sheets and the fantasy, like I've never heard of a lot of these guys. I'm sure we have some big fans in here that know basically all the players, even on the small teams. But for me, especially some of these small teams, newly promoted teams, I still even need to learn the players' names and never heard of them before. So it's a good way of doing that. Next up here is at Cagliari, another newly promoted side. They knocked out Palermo after extra time. In this team forward rotation looks likely just with the experience and then also the forwards that went on the bench. I'm not really sure who's going to be starting. I know I'm saying that this competitive fixture is going to tell that, but just based on the names there, I'm not sure that anyone has the forward spot locked in, so I'm not going to be looking there. One really interesting player though that I saw is Adam Aubert. He looks like likely to be maybe the cheapest defensive option you can get that seems to be starting based on these competitive Coppa Italia matches. He's listed as 4.0. So if you're really struggling and you need to try to get in as cheap as possible defender, you may look at Adam Aubert as someone that every week you can start on the bench. And if someone needs to sub in, well, he's there to maybe get you 1, 2, maybe even 3 points for playing the full 90 minutes. And you never know when these teams could pull out a 0-0 clean sheet. Or again, as a defender, they could lose, let's say 4-0, but if all those are in one of the halves, he still gets a half clean sheet, right? Because it's clean sheets per half. So just little things to keep in mind. Next, we're going to Salernitana, and this is one based on past teams that it did not look like they had a proper starting 11 in. Um, Dia was on the bench, and so he was not starting striker. And based on last season, I'm still pretty sure Dia should have that starting position. Let me know otherwise in the comments if you think he has completely lost that starting spot. But I'm pretty sure I was surprised when I saw Dia didn't start this game. Also, Ochoa and Sepe were on the bench. They did not start in keeper, which again, I'm kind of surprised at that. I don't see Ochoa being someone that is ready to sit on the bench and not play games. Oh, sorry. Kundreva showed that he can still play. He scored the lone goal in the game. He is 7.0 at his age, playing on a team like Salernitana. I won't be choosing him off the start, but if he's still as consistent as he has been in the past, I will consider him down the road. But that is a bit of an expensive price tag for him. The last guy that I'm looking at is Junior Sambia. I never heard of him before this, but he was playing wingback and he's only at 4.2 listed as a defender, so could be a nice cheap option to look at in the future. Next one is Sassuolo versus Cosenza. They won 5-2 after extra time. They scored 3 goals in extra time, which is a little rare. One thing that we've talked about already, Berardi, he did not dress, showing that a transfer for him could be very likely. And so we'll see where he goes and if that increases or decreases his value. The player that I was kind of interested in from Sassuolo was Nadim Bajrami, who used to play for Empoli, but he's at Sassuolo now. He's only 5.4 mil and offers an interesting differential option in the midfield, and he has lots of Serie A experience. So at least you'd kind of know what you could be getting with him now playing in what I'd say is a stronger team. I'd say Sassuolo is better than Empoli, so maybe he'll have more of an output. Andrea Pinamonti, it was listed at 7.0, so pretty expensive for a Sassuolo striker, I'd say, but he does have penalties, which always increases the value of a striker, I'd say. So maybe worth looking at. And lastly, not a player that I'll be looking at, but we'll see if he ends up cracking the Sassuolo side, is Samuel Mulateri. He may have earned himself a spot for getting a brace in extra time, so he's definitely trying to stamp his mark in the Sassuolo side. Next game, we're looking at Lecce versus Como. Lecce won 1-0. Strefezza, who we know has been in my squad, and he had a fantastic season last year. Listed still very cheap at 5.4 in the midfield, was playing this center attacking role, which I found very interesting. Normally, he's been out on the wing. He had this center forward role for this match, and Asan Cisse did not feature. So that's interesting to see if Cisse will end up coming into matches or starting matches, and Strefezza will get pushed out wide or not. But he could be very good value for his role on the team as of right now, and I can't see him leaving my side. Pontes Almquist scored the lone goal of the game. Could fill a midfield spot at 4.4. He kind of played in a wing position where Strefezza used to play. So just someone to keep an eye on. Again, not someone that I'm looking to bring in game week 1, but if he continues to play in that spot, that could be a nice budget player to bring in at some point. Monza was another loss for the Serie A teams against Reggiana. The goal scorer was a 4.8 defender, Danilo D'Ambrosio, who used to play for Inter. I wouldn't count on him as someone that's likely going to be scoring goals. But I don't know. I don't see him as someone that I'm going to be bringing into my team as of right now, even with that goal. Danny Motta was in the starting striker spot. And the other player that I had all last season is Di Gregorio, but I think he is too expensive for the team that he plays on, and I don't think that his production is going to be as good as it was last year, and live up to that price point. I also just overall wanting to kind of these teams are losing to Serie A, but B teams are gonna have to prove themselves to me before I start trusting them to get clean sheets and such. And lastly, we have Torino, who played for La Pisalo. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Torino, I wasn't really impressed with too much. All their defenders are quite expensive for the type of team that they are. Mirjam Voivoda at 4.8 was worth, I guess, a glance. He was playing in the defensive role, but has a defensive listing on Serie A Fantasy, but was playing a little higher up on the wing. So someone listed as a defender, but playing up higher is someone I guess always worth looking at. The other goal scorer was Ivan Ilic at 5.0 mil, but I don't see him as someone that's going to be scoring regularly. Just pointing out that that was a production that happened throughout the match. Sanabria at 8.0 mil had Torino's striker spot, which isn't super surprising, but that is too expensive for me to take as of right now. And that kind of rounds us all up based on Coppa Italia. Hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.